Hello, Backspinners. My name is Larry Baush, and this is my podcast, The Tour Backspin Show. Today we'll be talking to Ward Clayton, author of the legendary Caddies of Augusta National. Let's start off with how you got interested in golf, how you got in the game.
I grew up 5 blocks away from the Durham, North Carolina municipal course. And even though I was a basketball and football player growing up, starting about age 11 or 12, my mother decided that in the summer that I needed somewhere that I would be safe and secure, and a golf course was always the best place. So I went to the junior clinic at the local municipal course, and I was hooked. So it was that's how I got started. I started playing golf. So it's been a long time ago, but I was smitten that I could go out and play by myself or with friends, either way.
Well, that's cool. Most of the people we talked to, they got into the game through their father. You got into the game through your mother.
Well,
in an indirect way.
Indirectly, yeah. Neither of my parents play golf. It was just, I was a product of my environment, Larry. It was nearby. I could walk there. It was the price was pretty daggone good when you're a junior kid, and continued to be that way since it was the municipal course. So it was an easy decision to make.
And then you've had quite a career within the golf industry. Why don't you give us a quick overview of your experience within the industry?
I was always interested, even though I played sports, I was always interested in writing about it because I was more intrigued with how the players what motivated them, what their backstory was versus, 20 points in a game or 2 touchdowns or whatever like that. I was intrigued with what inspired them. So therefore, I got into the journalism business. I like to write. When I was in high school and beyond that, I was in the newspaper business in Lumberton, North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, and Augusta, Georgia. And then I transitioned and was in the communications business with the PGA Tour for 10 years. And then I hung my own job sign out, and I've been doing that since 2010. So a lot of work as an ink stain wretch, and then got involved with the PR business. So it's always been close to sports. Has always been something that's interested me, especially when you got a lot of things in the world that tear at each other. Sports is is pretty unifying. I think even though people oppose each other, it's still inviting to get in the middle of that.
Well, that's quite the interesting career. I use try to get as local of a newspaper as I can for my articles for Tour Backspin every week, for 2 reasons. One, it takes my readers inside the ropes locally for the tournament being played that I'm covering, and for the other, it pays homage to the newspaper journalists of the time, which is such a long lost art today. So,
oh gosh, it's a sad state of affairs when you don't have somebody that can document not only sporting events, something as simple as high school football, but your county commission meeting, things like that. The people that are out there now that say bad things about the media, they really don't understand the whole dynamic that if your county commission's doing things unchecked, it could really affect your bottom line in your house and whatever else. So there needs to be somebody that's making sure they follow the guidelines.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk about your new book, The Legendary Caddies of Augusta National. It builds on and adds to your first book on the subject, Men on the Bag. Could you talk about the updates included in your new book and how it differs from the first book?
Sure. The original book was out of print, so it was necessary to redo it. And I thought it was pertinent to do that because all the characters or the caddies I wrote about in the book, some of them have passed away, some things that happened to them during the span of 20 years. It was necessary to do that. But I'd also learned so much about their effort to just to get to their workplace. I figured it was necessary not only to update what happened with the Caddy Court Augusta 20 some years, 40 some years later, but also to add a chapter on the neighborhood where the majority of these caddies grew up, which is adjacent to Augusta National and Augusta Country Club. It's called Sand Hills, which is really, Larry, a really unique community because Augusta Country Club and Augusta National are side by side, and then there's these historic cemeteries located within that area. And then just beyond that is a place called Walton Way, which has got all these humongous ancient homes. And right in the middle of that is Sand Hills. And Sand Hills is a black community. And the story of that community is post Civil War, a lot of free black slaves and families and so forth settled in that community because they could walk a distance to these big houses and work as landscapers, butlers, maids, cooks, etc., like that. So it was easy to get to the workplace. And similarly, these kids, when golf became a big deal in Augusta in the early 1900s, and when Augusta National was built in 1930s, the kids could walk next door to Augusta Country Club, and they needed caddies, and they could make a buck. They didn't have to get on a bike, they didn't have to get in a car. They could go caddy over there, and then they would quote graduate to Augusta National. So that was all an interesting aspect of it. I'd been to Sand Hills before, but never dove into its origins or what it, who grew up there. So if you're in the shadow of Yankee Stadium, you want to go work at Yankee Stadium, similar to what these kids do. So,
Yeah, I found the map in the book very interesting. I didn't know that the Sand Hills was that close to both golf courses. And then I also found it very interesting that most of them got their start at Augusta Country Club and, like you say, graduated to Augusta National. Can you talk a little bit more about the process that took?
sure. I'll use Carl Jackson as an example. Carl caddied for both of Ben Crenshaw's wins. Carl, on March 31st, has turned 78. So, Carl grew up in what he calls a shotgun house in Sand Hills. And shotgun house meaning that you could legitimately shoot a gun through the front door and out the back door because it was such a small home. And he quit school at age 12 and needed to raise some money for his family. So he started caddying. You could have gotten in a car and gone out and picked cotton or gone and sold illegal liquor or something like that. But he found this opportunity because his older brothers did it. He knew some of the men that ran the caddy court, Augusta Country Club. He went over there and caddied, and before you know it, he'd gone to Augusta National. He tells the story, which is really interesting. Now, if you've been to Augusta National, you understand that it's like the gates of Fort Knox because it's very protected. But Carl says from his house he could walk on the outskirts of the 16th and 17th holes of the Augusta Country Club, and there was a hole in the fence behind the 13th tee at Augusta National, and he could walk through the fence to get to work. So I don't think that's holes there anymore, but it just gives you an indication that he was basically in his neighborhood. When he was a kid in the summer, when Augusta National was closed, he and his friends used to swim in Race Creek and fish in Race Creek and build a fire adjacent to the water and cook fish. And so, basically his backyard.
Yeah, different times. Let's talk about the tradition of Augusta caddies at the Masters and how all that changed in 1982.
I think that was going to happen pretty soon. It just so happened that they had in 1982 there was a rainstorm one round, and there was confusion about communicating about when play was going to resume the next day. And a handful of guys didn't have caddies when play resumed that morning. So, like David Graham's wife was caddying for him. So it became a little bit of the final straw. Players had been urging Hord Harden, who was a chairman at the time, to let them bring their own caddies. Golf's purses had gone way up, Larry, and caddies got a percentage of it. So their profession, it became a profession, I guess you could say. When you became a traveling caddy on tour, you could make a nice living. And so there was an interest in the players wanted to bring their own caddies to the Masters. And Augusta National still had quite a great caddy corps, but they didn't have a lot of depth to it. So, for example, if you had an 80, 90 player field, maybe 50 or so guys had really top of the line caddies and they filled in from then on. So there was probably another factor there that they wanted to have every player to have a caddy of his choosing. So that came about. The only thing I wish is that there would have been a little bit more of a homage paid to this all black caddy corps where, if you're an amateur or a first time player, they could strongly suggest that a caddy at Augusta National work with you because that would be helpful. And plus, it would keep their workforce active. So, about a fourth of the field in 1983 had Augusta National caddies, and the rest brought their own.
Yeah, and there was a time on the PG on the tour during the summer, the players could not use their own caddies. They had to use local boys who were out of school for the summer. So we've come a long way from that to caddies making six figure incomes
Well,
by being a caddy.
no doubt. Well, all the major championships had that situation.
Mm-hmm.
If you went to the U.S. Open prior to the late 70s, you had Billy Joe Smith, a 12-year-old kid, caddying for you. He didn't know how to caddy, he just knew how to carry the bag. So it wasn't that big of a factor. You couldn't bring your own guy. The USGA and the PGA of America had the same policy where the local club provided the caddies.
Yeah, it's probably one of the reasons that Tony Lema was able to win the '64 Open Championship. His first time at St. Andrews was because he got Tip Anderson
Yeah,
assigned to his bag.
pretty
Yeah,
good, pretty good caddy.
yeah. It's hard to write about this era with the caddies at Augusta without the topic of racism coming into it. Um, and you even write about it with some of the smoker boxing matches that were put on using the caddies that were pretty brutal. Um, you also have the 1963 Masters film opening up with a chorus of the caddies in their jumpsuits singing a song, which at the time probably wasn't viewed as very racist, but this much time past that in different mores, a lot of people would look at that and say it was quite racist. You want to talk about how the doors um, were open for these caddies and how racism was either played a part or was overlooked during that era?
A lot of the inspiration for me to do this book is based upon some of that. When I worked at the Augusta Chronicle as a sports editor, we would do untold number of historic stories, and we'd research, and occasionally I'd run into the caddies being identified, but it was generally only by their nickname. So therefore, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even into the 70s, the media probably didn't think much of the caddy story because A, they're caddies, they weren't very well thought of, and B, they were, Augusta's caddy corps was all black. Um, I think a lot of the basis for this is these guys came from the neighborhood next door, so they were kids trying to make a living, whether they're black or they're white, whatever. So they developed this skill set over the years, probably starting before the Masters at Augusta Country Club, and since Augusta was a resort town in the early 1900s up until the 30s, 40s, or 50s, and they probably developed the skill set which allowed them to work next door. It just so happened they were all black, but they did. They had a hard time. I would think a lot of times just getting to work. You alluded to members at Augusta National having an off-site function where they drafted the kids who worked in the bar or the kitchen and the caddies to come in and fight blindfolded, and they bet on them. That was that wasn't just at Augusta National. That took place at clubs not just in the South but all over. And then in the early '70s, you had race riots in Augusta when the black community felt like they were being taken advantage of, and they weren't being given similar treatment in regard to some of the sewage or education, things of that nature. So some of these caddies were part of that community. So there was a lot of things they had to deal with just to get to Augusta National to work, which gosh, if I'd have been faced with that, I would have tried to find something else to do probably. But they hung in there. They hung pretty tight. So I think a lot of their stories, you can look at it with a racial tone, but you can also realize these were guys who lived next door who bonded and developed this, unbelievable ability to caddy. And, Larry, if you ever had a caddy, the first thing that always pops up with me, they can read who you are, your personality right away. And that's what these guys can do. They understood that when they saw Larry on the first tee, if he was nervous, Nelly on the first tee, they're going to come up and tell you a couple of jokes and get you loose and make you feel comfortable. So they knew that right away. That's their hidden secret, I guess you could say, because they understood how personalities worked.
Yeah, it takes a special guy to be able to do that. They're part psychologist, part buddy, part boss. I come from the relationship not so much as a player with a caddy, but as a caddy to a player. My caddy now is controlled by a remote control, and I grew up. I grew up when caddies were still used, and have very many fond memories of my caddy days.
Well, I'll give you another example. It's right up in your neck of the woods at Bandon Dunes. When Mike Kaiser developed Bandon Dunes, one of the first lines of employment he wanted to make sure was stellar was the caddy corps. Because any group that comes to Bandon and spends 54 holes there, 3 days, nights, they spend 10 times as much time with a caddy as they do with anybody else. And he wanted to make sure that A, the caddy corps was excellent, and B, they were happy, so that the people that came there would feel like this place is a gym. We got to come back.
And that's a model that's been copied at Chambers Bay as well.
Yeah. Really cool.
The backstories of these men are fascinating. The chapter on Carl Jackson almost brought me to tears. Carl has a very interesting life. Can you talk about Carl and some of the opportunities that he was presented, especially in regards to Jack Stevens, and how he's doing right now?
Carl, age 78 on March 31st. Pretty amazing. Carl is most well known for his relationship and friendship with Ben Crenshaw. They call each other friend more than they do player and caddy. But little known is his long, almost lifelong relationship with Jack Stevens, who became chairman at Augusta National. And Jack Stevens' financial firm was largely responsible for helping getting Walmart off the ground. So a man had a lot of funds, and he hired Carl to work for him in a lot of capacities, like his right-hand man, whatever else. And, today Carl is the caddy master emeritus at the Alotian Club in Arkansas. So that's a friendship and a partnership. No, Jack Stevens is no longer with us, but Jack's son, Warren Stevens, now runs that business and is getting ready to retire and hand it to his sons. But Warren and Carl are like brothers, similar in age. Warren is now, I don't know if you know this or not, Warren Stevens, who's a member of Augusta National, is now the ambassador to the UK for Trump. So he was appointed to that position. And so if you ever want to go play golf in the UK, that might be the guy to go talk to. I don't know. But Carl is probably one of the few that took advantage of the opportunities for the people he met, whether it be the player Ben Crenshaw or Jack Stevens. And that's been his. He found an opportunity there to better himself by doing that. Just and he had 6 kids, Larry. Carl quit school at age 12, and all 6 of his kids college graduates.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, so you can't find a better guy. He's intimidating because he's 6'4", big guy, but very very soft spoken. So to show you what the other caddies thought about him, Steve Williams, who caddy for Tiger for so long, he found out Carl's shoe size. And when Stevie was caddying for Tiger, the resources of Nike are right there. So every year he'd get a couple of the best, probably Air Jordans or whatever else kind of shoes, and bring them to Augusta and give them to Carl, hoping that Carl would spill the beans and give him some insight about Augusta National and its secrets when Crenshaw was still playing. I think that Carl said thank you very much and didn't tell him any secrets. So
Well, was it Carl that worked with Michael Greller during that rain
yeah, he
delay?
did. He did. He did. Michael Greller, a Northwest guy, caddied for Crenshaw, and therefore, excuse me, caddied for Jordan Spieth, and Crenshaw's a University of Texas guy, Spieth's a University of Texas guy, and so he asked Carl to give him some insight. Same happened to Scotty Scheffler here the last couple of years. Crenshaw asked Carl to spend some time with Ted Scott, and lo and behold, look at Ted Scott. Ted Scott's won on 4 times at the Masters, twice with Bubba Watson, and now twice with Scotty Scheffler. So Ted's not doing bad.
Yeah, it just points out the personalities in golf too, especially Crenshaw and Carl, that willing to help the next generation along. Um, it's just you don't see that in a lot of other sports.
Oh no, you don't. You don't. And Michael Greller, great guy. Michael tells a great story about winning lottery tickets to the Masters to go for a round, like 5 years, maybe even less than that, 3 or 4 years. He went to the Masters one year and just looked at it, and next thing you know, he's back there caddying for Jordan Spieth a few years later. So pretty,
Dream come true.
high school math teacher, middle
Yeah,
school math teacher. That's pretty amazing.
yeah. Um, why don't you talk about some of the other colorful personalities? I was especially intrigued by the backstory of Stovepipe.
Huh. Stovepipe, who was Gene Sarazen's first caddy when he made the double eagle, still not 100% sure of his given name. 1935. When I'm doing a lot of research on this, the first book I thought his real name was something, but it turns out that wasn't the case. And then came back and found out a little bit more about him. But Stovepipe was a local minister, and he wore one of these tall hats, which really distinguished him when he caddied for Sarazen, who was a short guy. It was like Mutt and Jeff, the old cartoon, because Stovepipe was probably well over 6 feet tall, and he wore that hat, and Sarazen was a little short guy, so they were definitely opposites there. But Stovepipe evidently tried to convince Gene Sarazen not to go for the green in two on the 15th hole in 1935 because he thought it would cost him a percentage of the wages for that week. So he thought he was out of the tournament, which large part he was. And then he holed the shot, and Sarazen asked if the divot was still there, and Stovepipe said no. I think they've already filled it up with ryegrass, so it's gone by now. So um, I think in large part that's a great example. Even though Stovepipe may not have given him a lot of insight to the golf course, probably gave him a little bit, but he probably had some things to say during the course of the round that made Sarazen laugh, like the part about the money's not coming in at church like I want it to. And Saracen probably had a good laugh at that. Kept him loose, which is what a caddy's supposed to do.
Yeah. I also like the story. I think it was 1963. I might have the year wrong. When Nicholas and his caddy were coming up the 18th green, and Nicholas famously is colorblind, and so he had to ask his caddy about the scoreboard. Why don't you talk about that?
The scoreboards at Augusta National are was it is it green for under par and red for over par? Is that correct, Larry? I think that's right.
Yep.
I might have that opposite, but they're coming up the 18th hole, and the big scoreboard's there, and it's been a pretty good battle. And Nichols looks at the scoreboard and can't determine which is green and which is red, and so he asks, he says, which one? How many of those ones or those twos or threes are green? And Willie Peterson said, "Just you, boss, just you."
I
So,
love that reply.
so,
I just love
so
that reply.
yeah. So
Just you.
Willie is Willie's the impetus behind how this book got started in large part, Larry, because his daughter called the Chronicle newspaper office in 1999 and said, "I wanted to call and let you know my father's passed away." And so that led to a discussion with her and finding out more about who he was. And if there's ever been a more demonstrative caddy at the Masters, I can't find him, because Nicholas was largely pretty stoic when he played. Slow pace play, really, really cerebral when he played golf. But Willie was exactly the opposite. Willie would take the towel off the golf bag and roll it over his head, and he danced on the golf course. And if somebody, as you well know, in the early '60s when Nicholas came on the scene, he was a heavy set guy and was beating Arnold Palmer, and the Arnie's Army hated that, and so they were particularly critical of him at the golf course, and Willie was his bouncer. He largely kept the gallery at bay, whether it be by humor or probably threatening people or things of that nature. He was really quite an outgoing character. And, the only time on the cover of Sports Illustrated, remember when Sports Illustrated, Larry, when guys of our age used to collect covers for Sports Illustrated? Willie's the only Masters caddy to ever appear front and center on the cover of Sports Illustrated. 1972, when Nicholas won, there's a picture on the cover, and Nicholas has got his putter raised in the air, but right in front of him is Willie Pearson with a cigarette dangling out of his mouth and a one like this. It's unbelievable. So I wish I would have had an opportunity to meet and talk to Willie more often, because he was definitely. I drew a comparison between when Muhammad Ali was in his boxing heyday. He had Drew Bundini Brown over there in the corner with him, who knows what his responsibility was other than to march around and tout how great Ali was. But Willie had sort of a similar kind of personality.
Yeah, that's funny. Now there was one caddy who wore a Green Masters towel under his ball cap, and he did it for a specific reason. You want to tell that story?
Oh yeah, you're ruining the end of the story. You're ruining the punchline, but I'll tell it to you. 1971, when Charlie Cootie won the Masters, he had a guy caddying for him by the name of Walter Cricket Pritchett. And Cricket was his nickname because he was about 6'2", and he was really thin and probably had long arms, and he resembled a cricket. That's how he got his nickname. He drove a bus in Atlanta. He's one of the few caddies to come to Augusta and caddy there and win, who wasn't an Augustan. But he's caddy for Cootie, who's very much of a middle of the road golfer. But come Saturday in 1971, they're on the 8th fairway, and Charlie Cootie's leading the Masters. And Nicholas and Johnny Miller are right behind him, and they're waiting for the green to clear on the par 5 8th, and their second shot. All of a sudden, Cricket asks Charlie Cootie, says, "What time does the television coverage begin today?" And Charlie Cootie's focused on what he's going to hit in the screen. So, well, why are you asking me that? We're supposed to be focused on the shots. Well, I'm just concerned about what time TV starts. He says, "Why is that?" He said, well, I drive a bus in Atlanta. I told my boss I was going to visit my sick grandmother in Atlanta. And then he says, and I didn't expect you were going to play this well. So Charlie Cootie, this day, by the way, Charlie Cootie has never missed a Champions Dinner. 1971, he's been to every one of them since, which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
But Charlie Cootie to this day says that on the back nine, he wasn't as concerned about Nicklaus and Miller chasing him down because what Cricket had done is taken the towel off the golf bag, put it over his head, and put a cap over it because he wanted to hide from the camera so his boss wouldn't know he wasn't in Houston. So that's another example of how something, whether it was meant to be or not, it took Cootie's mind off what's going on the back nine at the Masters. All he's thinking about is look at how silly my caddy looks, and he's just laughing about it. So he was playing free. That was the whole key there. So really,
That was one of the surprising things that I learned in doing my research and interviews for the documentary on my book, is what a sense of humor Cootie had. That surprised me.
He does. I agree. Very, very, very dry-witted humor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Charlie Cootie, and I didn't include this in the book. Charlie Cootie is a guy who years later, after he won, was standing on the first tee at Augusta, and somebody asked him, "Hey, Charlie, it looks like they moved this tee back a little bit." And he said, "Either that or they moved the clubhouse." So very, very much of a dry-witted, that sort of that rural Texas kind of humor that you can't help but laugh at.
Yeah. So almost every one of these caddies had a nickname, and in your book, you kind of dive in to try to find the origins of some of these nicknames. Why don't you run down some of the more colorful nicknames?
Okay. Stovepipe you mentioned. Po Baby. Po Baby was that because he was always whining about I didn't get paid enough, or the hills are too tall, today's too hot. So he got the nickname Po Baby. Daybreak. And you would think that's because he stayed out at a bar too late, but he always considered that he was the first guy on site at the golf course before the sun came up to wait for the first bag. So therefore, he got the nickname Daybreak. Iron Man, Nathaniel Iron Man Avery, caddy for Palmer, he got the nickname. And there's many stories about how he got that nickname. Iron Man contended that when he was a kid, really scrawny, he could carry 2 bags for 18 holes, and then therefore he became, very durable. He was an Iron Man. There are also stories that he drank too much and had firecrackers in his hand or tried to cut up on a golf ball with an axe and injured himself. But it didn't affect him. So there's so many stories. Now, keep in mind, this Iron Man was before Marvel's Iron Man even came about. So that's a great nickname. Pappy Stokes, who's the guy who won 5 Masters twice with Hogan. Pappy got the nickname because even when he was a kid, he was very slow paced, and people said he had like an old man, so therefore he earned the nickname Pappy. And he's the guy that determined every putt breaks to Race Creek because when he was a kid, he was working as the quote water boy when the workers were building Augusta National. He watched it rain and he watched the water go down toward Race Creek, and that's how he developed this notion that everything breaks to the lowest point on the property at Race Creek. So there's so many of those nicknames. It's unbelievable how many people. Everybody had a nickname, and that's why it was confusing because you didn't know their real name. So unless you had somebody lead them in the direction of giving you a phone number and address or friends or relatives, you weren't going to be able to find them by their nickname a lot of times.
Yeah, you must have been feeling like an archaeologist at times, trying to find the biographical information on these guys.
Well, not only that, but caddies are very close to the situation in golf, but caddies are also prone. if a story's got 1/8 of the truth, they're going to tell you that 1/8 and also give you the other 7/8. And a lot of times it may not be true. So you got to dive down the whole path of confirming whether a story is accurate or not.
Yeah,
So
it seems like it was a real research challenge.
it was, yeah. But once you got hold of relatives and friends and so forth like that, they probably, 50 years ago or 75 years ago, they didn't have the opportunity to tell their story for the greater good. So they were more than happy to tell the story of how so and so became famous. Since we're in the, since when I'm speaking with you, we're in the middle of March Madness. Will Avery, who played basketball at Duke from Augusta and is now an assistant for the Blue Devils. Will's great uncle is Nathaniel Ironman Avery. Will's approaching 50 years old. Until he was age 24, he didn't really understand the impact that his great uncle had made as a caddy at Augusta National, and
Hmm.
he was floored by that. So he was a big part of when we did the documentary Loopers, the Caddies Long Walk, which includes these caddies, some of these caddies in it. Will was really instrumental in helping us get the marker in place for his great uncle. So for 32 years, I think, Nathaniel Ironman Avery was buried in downtown Augusta without a marker. So Arnold Palmer and others helped contribute to getting a marker put where his final resting place is.
Well, you referenced the movie, The Loopers. Why don't you talk about the movie and how it came about?
Um, I got a cold call from somebody. I'd had multiple ones of these from people saying, "Hey, this would make a good film, this book," and some of them didn't have the wherewithal to do it. But finally, I got a call from a gentleman named Jim Packer with Lionsgate, and my wife said, "You need to call this guy back." She Googled him and found out about him, and Packer was interested in doing a documentary on caddies because at Bel Air in LA, where he lives, he'd had a long time caddy and he thought that would make an interesting documentary. So we went down the whole path. I got involved with them. I'd never been involved with a film before, and they knew how to make films. And most of the guys who were doing the film had done documentaries on surfing, and so they were used to shooting these wide landscapes for surfing, much like golf courses. That would be a great format to do that with. So these guys knew something about golf, but they knew how to shoot landscape pictures, whether it be in Ireland or Scotland or Pebble Beach or Bandon Dunes or Augusta. So they were experts of that. And I knew golf and I knew the caddy part of it. So if they were going to say he shot a birdie or something like that, I said, no, you don't talk that way when you do that. You got to follow a certain dialogue. So we played off each other quite well, I think, because I understood the game and to in depth, and they understood how to shoot stuff. And that was, it's one of those things, Larry, where they didn't know golf and had not shot golf, but their instinct on how to shoot things successfully made it work because they didn't know much about it. So that was good.
Yeah, it's a wonderful film, as is your work with Augusta on the Hallowed Ground series. Talk about that a little bit.
Last year, Masters Digital team decided to do these mini films on different aspects of Augusta National, and they gathered a lot of people who I got involved with that because I'd been there a long time. So I guess that means I'm old, Larry. So they asked me about certain aspects of, like Crow's Nest or Amen Corner or things like that, various parts of Augusta National, and put together a lot of things from the library of old footage, old interviews, great, great video segments, interview segments. So I think it turned out really well because there's so much information about old masters that probably still hadn't seen the light, which would probably be pretty cool over time to have that come out.
But I remember as the evolution of the information that you can now get from Augusta National has just been fantastic. When I was a kid, you saw the last 3 or 4 holes that eventually expanded to more holes, and then the entire back nine, and then finally the full 18 holes. But some of these stories that are coming out in the last few years and the way that they're being presented digitally is such a far cry from the secrecy of, say, the 1960s, 1970s Masters. Would you agree with that?
Oh, no doubt. And it's not just as far as tournament coverage is concerned. I think a lot of it is some of the charitable aspects of what they do. When Augusta, today marks, since we're talking on March 27th, today is 6 months since the big storm hit Augusta and then diverted up to Western North Carolina. Augusta was devastated. Augusta, pretty soon thereafter, donated $5 million to clean up, supporting people who lost homes, et cetera, like that. So I think they've been really out front and publicizing their efforts to help charitably. And there's a project going on in Augusta now where they're taking the local municipal course, Augusta Municipal Course, better known as the Patch, and they're redoing it. That started in January. It'll have a brand new golf course come April of 2026. It's Bo Welling and Tom Fazio, who are two renowned course architects, are over there, and they're going to take the adjacent First Tee facility, the Augusta Municipal Course, and they're partnering with the Augusta Tech, which will have a program there for people who want to get into the golf superintendent work, or whether they want to be in um, hospitality, whether it be working in a kitchen or whatever like that. So there's an educational aspect to that too. And so, I'm sure that Bo and Tom Fazio will go in there and make the golf course a lot better. It got nicknamed the Patch because one of the reasons is the golf course, like a lot of municipal courses, is pretty rough around the edges. And so it'll be a much better golf course, much better condition. And I don't think the price point is going to go up considerably there. It may be a little bit, but not very much. And that's where, ironically, a lot of the caddy corps from Sandhills used to walk over there. It wasn't far from their neighborhood and play golf. So it's sort of a circling back. I can't wait to see what that looks like, as far as tearing down an old golf course, rebuilding it, and so forth, doing it within 15 months. That's a tall task, but I'm sure they'll do a great job.
Yeah, what a great project. Why don't you tell us what it was like to play Augusta with the caddy David Chestnut?
Huh. Um, I need to look up David Chestnut. That's a great thing for me to remember. Um, it was I'd had a caddy before. I grew up near Pinehurst, so I'd had a caddy before, but not in this making a debut at Augusta National. The biggest thing I learned was, well, two things. Number one, we talked about anything and everything but golf during the course of the round, which was very, that was terrific fun. And my eyesight for reading those greens, I wasn't prepared for that. I had a putt on the fifth hole, which I thought broke about 6 inches to the right, and he said no, it broke a foot the other direction. So his knowledge of the greens was unbelievable. If I wouldn't have had that, I would have probably had 7 or 8 three putts, no doubt, because the greens are so fast and so deceptive. So his knowledge and accompanying him around was just invaluable. Really cool.
How many caddies are on the staff at Augusta currently?
Probably 50 or 60, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot more than I would have guessed.
Yeah. But they may be in a rotation too. They
Hmm.
they may they may work certain days and so forth, or they have certain club events where a lot of the members will come, and they'll probably even have more than that.
Hmm.
So The Caddy Corps at Augusta National is now run by an organization called Caddy Master Incorporated, which is owned by Troon, which is the world's largest golf course management firm. But they teach them the ropes on how to act around the members, how to read greens, how to do yardage, everything like that. And I'm sure they probably weigh on some of the history of the caddies at Augusta National because that tradition is still there, still exists.
Talk about how the Caddy Shack evolved over the years.
It was truly a caddy shack when they started. It had a dirt floor and cinder block building. They put for a while they put a pool table in there, but in the probably the 40s and into the early 50s when they had the pool table and there were a couple of caddies who were late for getting the first tee because they were shooting pool for money in the caddy shack. So they decided they better find a way to make them focus on their main job. But it was pretty rudimentary, and then it developed into a little better place. And that now the caddy facility is unbelievable. The players hang out there. You know, when you go to the Masters now, the caddy facility is located. If you're standing on the tee box at the driving range or practice facility, the caddy facility is located just to the right of the tee. And there's a whole cafeteria in there which guys can eat, and players just hang in there. They'd rather be there. And what's developing now, Larry, right behind the practice facility, is this year they built underground parking for all the players. So, courtesy Mercedes Benz for all the players will park underground. Next year, on top of that, will be a building that is probably a combination of a gym, workout facility, probably a place where they can get some treatment in case they got some, pulled shoulder or bad knee or whatever like that, and then probably a place that can accommodate their families, and that's right beside the caddy facility. So it'll be a one-stop shopping right through there. So the caddy facility now is great. As Bones Mackay says, they ought to just go ahead and call it the Carl Jackson House. He thought that'd be an appropriate name.
I think it would be too.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool.
One of the most iconic things about Augusta National Caddies is the white jumpsuit. Do you want to talk about how it came to be and some of the background and lore about them?
Here you go. Here's one of them right here. I'll get a little show and tell here. This is the back of a caddy suit, and the name is Velcroed on the back, so you can interchange that. On the front, you got the number. So number one goes to the defending champion unless he chooses not to take it. This breast pocket would be the Augusta National logo. I don't have one of those. But these things are great when it's cold. Caddies love them. When it's hot, they don't really care for them because they can sweat through them pretty good. I know there's been a handful of caddies who showed up just wearing their underwear and wore this on top. So Jariah Beard used to always insist before he went out for a round of golf at the Masters that he always asked the question, did you thoroughly wash this uniform last night? Because I don't know who wore it yesterday. So it became a uniform because Augusta National wanted the caddies to look neat, wanted to make them look uniform. And Carl Jackson tells a story that he calls it the tuxedo of caddy uniforms, just because it's different than everywhere else. A little known fact, the Masters winner gets the green jacket for a year. He can take that home with him and bring it back next year. If the caddy wins the tournament, he can write Augusta National a letter, and they'll send him they'll clean that uniform and package it up and send it to him. And he doesn't have to return it; he gets to keep it.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so that's I know that some of the winning caddies who have those, they have them on display, and just like the green jacket, nobody else can touch it. Yeah.
Okay, this was a personal question for me. This is going to be my first trip to Augusta. This Masters, I'm going to be there on the grounds on Wednesday.
Okay.
and I want you to give me some pro tips on what I've got to see during Wednesday and where to go on the grounds.
Right, you're there Wednesday, par three contest day. I would suggest, because you'll be there in the morning early, I would suggest you go walk the golf course right away. Because what happens in the afternoon, about 2 o'clock, they close the course for play because they want to they want to go out and do some maintenance on it, and they want to encourage the players either to go play the par three contest or get out of Dodge. So go walk the golf course in the morning. You got to do that. You'll want to see the golf course anyway. You're probably not
Hmm.
there to see player A, B, and C. You just want to see what the golf course looks like.
Yep.
So I would encourage you to do that. You can sort of the little secret is if you go sit around the course in early afternoon to mid afternoon, they'll let you linger around there and sit, and eventually they'll ask you to leave. But you can sort of hang out and sit around there because that's really cool with not as many people there.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm looking forward to doing.
Yeah,
Trying to trying to maybe find a quiet spot before they kick you out where
yeah,
the players aren't playing. There's no hardly anybody around, and
yeah,
you just
yeah.
sit and absorb the atmosphere.
The par three contest is pretty cool just for the sheer fun nature of it. There's so many people packed into a pretty tight space area, even though they've enlarged it over the last couple of years. You go over there and take a glance at it and see what it looks like.
Hmm.
It's just as beautiful as the regular golf course is. But I think taking the big course while you got a chance, because you'll be done with your meeting by 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and that way you can go from there.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
And,
Is
and,
there
and
anything?
eat a pimento cheese sandwich, Larry. You have to do.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care if you. I don't care if you dislike it. A few years ago, a couple of caddies from the Old Course St. Andrews came, and they'd never been before. And I met them early in the morning, and about an hour later, I was working and came back and met them. They were talking to these people on a bench, and the people had convinced them to open the pimento cheese sandwich and put potato chips in the middle of it. And they were eating pimento cheese sandwiches with potato chips stuck in the middle of it. And I'm going, you guys, they're going to kick you out of here for doing that. And they thought I was being serious, but they had taken some local input and were eating it that way. I'm going, oh my gosh.
I read somewhere last week that you could go into the concession stand and buy every item, and you would spend $66.
That's not surprising. You're right. You're right. So you can go get a pimento cheese sandwich and chips and a soft drink for maybe $6 or something like that.
That's amazing.
But then again, when you go get your, I'm sure after talking about this, Larry, your brother and your wife and your sister and your kids and your everybody in your is going to give you a laundry list of things to buy. So you got to go broke in the golf shop because golf shop prices are standard. You get a
Hmm.
golf shirt and a hat. It's going to cost you, $150 or something like that.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, is there anything I haven't asked you about that you'd like to touch on?
I just, the title is about the caddies. I just think I've gotten to know a lot of these guys who, some of them who are no longer with us, and a lot of them are just really salt of the earth. And I just hope that people will remember the contribution they made to not only to Augusta National, but to golf and sort of setting the bar for caddying, and their heritage will be remembered. I just hope that's the case.
Great. Tell us where we can get your book.
You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at your local bookstore. You can go to Blair Pub, BLAIRPUB.com, which is the publisher. It's not a place you get a cold drink. But you can get it there. And just like anything about the Masters, I think that there's so much history, so much secrets to what goes on there. I think it'll make your visit to Augusta or watching it on TV um, even more enriching.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Well, thanks. It's been really fun to talk to you about this. It's a fun, great subject. So close to Masters, I can't tell you how excited I am to go this year, and it's been a pleasure talking to you about it.
Awesome. Well, good luck with the Tony Lima book going forward into, just like a lot of folks whose lives were cut short in their heyday. A lot of people are still really curious about who Tony Lima was and what could have been if he wouldn't have passed away in that plane crash.
Hmm.
That's always intriguing to learn about things like that. So
Yep. Thanks a lot for the kind words.
no
Again,
doubt,
thanks again.
no doubt. Look forward to seeing you on Wednesday on Masters Week.
Okay, I'll look you up.
All right,
I'll text you when I get on the grounds.
don't you can't take your phone.
Oh yeah, I can't take my phone. I'm still wrapping my head around that. Luckily, I can take my camera though
Yeah,
on
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah,
what you ought to do is just leave. You have to leave your phone in the car.
yeah,
So just text me when you come on site, and we'll figure out a place to rendezvous, just like you have to do old school. Got to meet at a
yeah.
certain place at a certain time. So
Oh, we got to meet by the tree, man.
yeah, I hear you. I hear you. That'd be great. That'd be great. That'd be great.
Thanks a lot. This
All
was
right.
fantastic.
Yeah, I love it.
So I'll talk to you in 10 days or whatever.
Very good. All right. Take care,
Okay.
Larry. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Ward.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Okay, how was that? That was pretty good. Some great insight into the caddy corps at Augusta National, and also some tips if you ever find yourself on the grounds of Augusta National during Masters Week. Big thanks to Clayton Ward, and check out his book called The Legendary Caddies of Augusta National. If you like what you saw, please consider subscribing to this channel. And if you like the history of the PGA Tour in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, then check out my Tour Backspin newsletter on Substack. You can find that at larrybaush.substack.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Tour Backspin Show. Now let's go out with some surfer music.